The massive ships appeared without warning above Earth's atmosphere. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than any building humanity had ever constructed. They hung in the sky like dark clouds, blocking out the sun in several major cities. People across the world stopped what they were doing and stared upward. Cameras pointed at the alien vessels that had just announced humanity's first contact with life beyond their planet. Inside the United Earth Coalition headquarters in Geneva, Taeyang Park stood at the window of the conference room, watching the ships through the glass. He was a tall man with graying hair, dressed in a simple black suit. His face showed no emotion as he studied the alien fleet. Behind him, dozens of world leaders argued loudly through video screens, their voices mixing together into chaos. "Silence, please," Taeyang said quietly. The room fell silent immediately. Everyone knew that Taeyang had been preparing for this moment for his entire career. He turned away from the window and faced the screens. "They will contact us soon. When they do, let me speak first." As if responding to his words, every screen in the room changed. The faces of world leaders disappeared, replaced by something else. The alien that appeared was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. It wore elaborate robes covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said. Its mouth did not move, but the words came through in perfect English, translated by technology humanity could barely imagine. "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Galactic Dominion. Your species has been observed. Your world has been evaluated. It is time for you to join the galactic community." Taeyang stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "Thank you for your introduction, Ambassador. I am Taeyang Park, Chief Diplomat of the United Earth Coalition. We are honored by your visit." Velthara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression that might have been surprise. "Your response is appropriate. This will make the integration process simpler. I will now present the terms of your incorporation into the Dominion." A document appeared on every screen in the room. It was hundreds of pages long, written in dense legal language. But certain numbers stood out clearly. 60% of Earth's resources would go to the Dominion as tribute. 2 billion humans would be relocated to work on other worlds. Earth's governments would report to Dominion oversight councils. All military forces would be dissolved, with able-bodied humans conscripted into Dominion service. The room erupted in angry voices again. Several world leaders began shouting at their screens. Taeyang raised one hand and slowly the voices quieted once more. "Ambassador Velthara," Taeyang said calmly. "How many species have accepted these terms?" "All of them," Velthara replied. 40,000 worlds across the galaxy are part of the Dominion. Your species will be the 40,001st. And what happens to species that refuse?" Velthara's expression changed slightly. The alien seemed almost amused. "No species has ever refused. You do not understand your situation. We have weapons that could turn your planet to dust. We have armies that number in the billions. We have technology that would seem like magic to your people. Refusal is not possible." Taeyang nodded slowly as if considering this information carefully. "I see, and when do you require our answer?" "You have 72 hours to accept the terms and begin the integration process. This is more time than we usually provide, but we understand that your species is young. Use this time to convince your people that cooperation is the only logical choice." 72 hours, Taeyang repeated. "Thank you, Ambassador. I will need to consult with Earth's leadership. We will contact you with our response." Velthara's eyes blinked again, all 4 at once this time. "Do not waste this opportunity, humans. The Dominion's patience is generous, but it is not infinite." The screens went dark. Immediately the chaos returned as world leaders began arguing again. But Taeyang walked to a different console and pressed a single button. A new face appeared on his private screen. It was Minji Kang, a woman in a military uniform with sharp eyes and short black hair. "They made contact," Taeyang said simply. "I saw the broadcast," Minji replied. "They're exactly as arrogant as we expected. Did you get a good read on their fleet composition?" "Our sensors have been analyzing them since they arrived. Send the data to Dohyun. I want to know how many ships we can eliminate in the first strike." Minji smiled slightly. "He's already running the calculations." "Taeyang, the world leaders are going to panic. Some of them will want to accept the Dominion's terms." "Let them panic," Taeyang said. "We've prepared for 200 years for this moment. Fear is natural, but we will not kneel to invaders." He paused, looking back at the window where the alien ship still hung in the sky. Contact Hyasian. Tell her to begin Phase 1. I want every defense platform online and ready within 24 hours. Understood. What are you going to tell the ambassadors? Taeyang turned back to the screen and his expression hardened. I'm going to tell them the truth. Earth bows to no one. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of secret meetings and careful preparations. The public watched the alien ships with a mixture of fear and wonder. News channels debated endlessly about what humanity should do. Some people protested, demanding that Earth fight. Others held signs welcoming the aliens, hoping that advanced technology would solve all of humanity's problems. But in hidden facilities across the solar system, another story was unfolding. On the moon, massive railgun platforms powered up for the first time in decades. In the asteroid belt, weapons that had been disguised as mining equipment rotated toward the alien fleet. On Mars, underground bunkers opened to reveal automated defense systems that had been built in absolute secrecy. When the 72 hours ended, Velthara appeared on Earth's screens again. This time, the alien was standing on the bridge of its flagship, surrounded by other members of the Dominion's command staff. Humans of Earth, Velthara began. The time for your decision has arrived. Speak now and join the Dominion. Refuse and face the consequences. Taeyang appeared on the screen opposite the alien. He looked exactly as calm as he had 3 days earlier. Ambassador Velthara, thank you for your patience. Earth has considered your offer carefully. And your answer? Our answer is no. Your terms are rejected. Furthermore, your fleet is in violation of Earth's territorial space. You have 48 hours to leave our solar system. If you refuse, we will remove you by force. For a long moment there was silence. Then Velthara began to laugh. It was a strange sound, almost musical, but filled with contempt. Around the alien, the other Dominion officers joined in the laughter. You truly do not understand, Velthara said, still laughing. No species in galactic history has ever threatened the Dominion. You have made a fatal mistake, humans. We will return and we will teach your species the price of defiance. The screen went dark. Across the world, people held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. In the United Earth Coalition headquarters, Taeyang turned to face Minji Kang, who had entered the room during the transmission. Are we ready? He asked. Minji nodded once. All systems are active. Do-hyun is waiting for your command. Taeyang looked back at the window one last time, at the alien ships that still filled the sky. Then we wait. They'll make the first move. And when they do, we'll show them exactly what humanity is capable of. The 48 hours passed slowly. The alien fleet remained in orbit, motionless and silent. People across Earth watched the skies nervously, wondering if war was about to begin. Many cities had already begun evacuations, though there was nowhere truly safe to go if the aliens decided to attack. In a command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of the moon, Do-hyun Choi sat in front of a wall of screens. He was a thin man with tired eyes, wearing a gray uniform with no insignia. His fingers moved across holographic controls, checking and rechecking weapon systems that most of humanity did not know existed. Sir, the deadline has passed, said a young officer beside him. The alien fleet is still in position. Do-hyun nodded without looking away from his screens. They're waiting to see if we'll panic and change our minds. Keep all systems on standby. Do not power up targeting systems yet. I don't want them to detect any changes. Hyejin Lee walked into the command center carrying a tablet. She was a short woman with sharp features and hair pulled back in a tight bun. The diplomatic channels are quiet. Taeyang says the aliens haven't attempted any further communication. He thinks they're planning something. Of course they are, Do-hyun replied. They can't accept our refusal without losing face. They'll attack something relatively unimportant to show us their power, something that makes a point without causing too many casualties. They want to scare us into submission, not destroy us completely. Can you predict where they'll strike? Do-hyun pulled up a map of Earth on his main screen. Red zones highlighted several areas. Probably here in the Australian outback. Large area, very few people, highly visible. Or possibly here in the Sahara Desert. Somewhere that demonstrates their weapons without killing millions of civilians. 2 hours later, sensors detected movement in the alien fleet. 200 ships separated from the main group and began descending toward Earth's atmosphere. Their trajectory took them toward the Australian continent. There it is, Do-hyun said quietly. All stations begin Phase 2 activation. Do it slowly. I want their sensors to miss the power-up sequence completely. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden weapons came fully online. The aliens had scanned Earth and its immediate space thoroughly, but they had never suspected what they were looking at. The massive structures on the moon that appeared to be mining facilities were actually railgun platforms capable of accelerating projectiles to 40% of light speed. The asteroid processing stations were weapons platforms. The scientific research bases on Mars housed targeting computers and sensor arrays. Everything had been disguised, hidden in plain sight. Built over 2 centuries of careful preparation, the alien fleet reached the upper atmosphere above Australia. On Earth, news cameras pointed skyward, broadcasting the moment to billions of viewers. The Dominion ships formed a perfect line, and then brilliant beams of light shot downward toward the empty desert below. The ground exploded into plasma and fire. The desert sand turned to glass in an instant. The energy weapons carved deep trenches into the earth, creating devastation that could be seen from space. It was a demonstration of power, a message that said, "This is what we can do to you." On the moon, Do-hyun watched the attack on his screens. His expression did not change. Target acquisition complete. All platforms report ready. "Sir, do we have authorization to fire?" asked the young officer. Do-hyun pressed a button on his console. Taeyang's face appeared on a small screen. "They just fired on our planet," Do-hyun said simply. Taeyang's face was grim. "Remove them. All of them." Do-hyun turned back to his controls. "All platforms you are authorized to engage. Fire at will." The moon's surface erupted with light and motion. Massive railguns that had been silent for decades suddenly came to life. Projectiles no larger than a human fist accelerated down electromagnetic tracks kilometers long, achieving speeds that made them nearly invisible. The platforms fired in perfect sequence, coordinated by computers that could calculate trajectories faster than any human mind. The first projectiles covered the distance from the moon to Earth orbit in less than 3 seconds. They struck the alien ships before any warning could be given, before any defensive systems could activate. At 40% of light speed, the kinetic energy of each projectile was devastating. Ships didn't explode so much as they simply ceased to exist, turned into clouds of superheated plasma and debris. The platforms on Mars fired next, their projectiles taking longer to arrive but adding to the destruction. Then the hidden weapons in the asteroid belt joined the attack. The alien fleet, which had been perfectly arranged in a demonstration formation, became a killing field. Fleet Marshal Croven stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching in horror as his fleet died around him. His species had been warriors for 10,000 years. He had commanded fleets in dozens of campaigns, but he had never seen anything like this. Evasive action. He screamed, "All ships scatter and return fire." But there was nothing to return fire at. The human weapons were hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, hidden on worlds and asteroids, firing from positions the Dominion sensors had never identified as threats. The alien ships tried to move, tried to escape, but they were too slow. The kinetic projectiles moved faster than the ships could react. In 90 seconds, 197 ships were destroyed. Only 3 vessels managed to escape, activating their faster-than-light drives in a panic and jumping away from the solar system. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence as the alien fleet simply vanished from the sky. Where hundreds of massive warships had hung like dark clouds, there was now only empty space and drifting debris. Do-hyun allowed himself a small smile. "Cease fire. Begin system diagnostics. I want damage reports from all platforms within the hour." Hee-jin was staring at the screens, her mouth slightly open. "We just destroyed an alien fleet. An actual alien fleet. In less than 2 minutes. We did exactly what we've trained to do for 200 years, Do-hyun replied. He stood up from his chair and stretched, his back cracking audibly. "Now comes the hard part. That was just a punishment force. When those 3 surviving ships report back to their empire, they're going to send something much larger." He was right. Within hours, the galactic communication networks were buzzing with news of the Dominion's defeat. On 1,000 worlds, species that had submitted to the Empire heard the impossible story. A primitive planet had destroyed a Dominion fleet. In the Grand Senate chamber of the Dominion's capital world, emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors from dozens of species argued about the proper response. Some suggested that Earth should be left alone, that the cost of conquest was too high, but they were shouted down by others who said that allowing any species to defy the Dominion would encourage rebellion across the Empire. In the end, the vote was unanimous. The Grand Armada would be deployed, 10,000 warships that had never been defeated in battle. Earth would be conquered and humanity would serve as an example to every other species in the galaxy. Defiance led only to destruction. But Earth was ready. Taiyang addressed the world in a broadcast that evening, standing before cameras with Minji Kang and other members of Earth's leadership beside him. Today, humanity defended itself. He said calmly, "An alien empire came to our world and demanded our submission. We refused. They attacked us and we defended ourselves. We destroyed their attack force with minimal casualties. Only 3 people were injured when debris from the alien ships fell into the ocean." He paused, letting that information sink in. 3 injuries against 200 alien warships. "The Empire will send more ships," Taiyang continued. "This is not over. But we have prepared for this moment for 2 centuries. We have weapons and defenses that the Empire cannot imagine. We have the courage to stand up to tyranny, and we have something they do not have. We fight for our freedom, for our families, for our home. They fight only to expand their empire." He looked directly into the camera and his voice grew stronger. "To the Galactic Dominion, you are not welcome here. Leave our solar system and do not return. If you send more ships, we will destroy them too. Earth belongs to humanity, and we will never surrender." Across the planet, people watched the broadcast and felt something they had not felt in days. Hope. The alien empire was vast and powerful, but humanity had drawn a line in the stars and said, "No further." In his command center on the moon, Do-hyun was already preparing for the next battle. He knew it would be harder, much harder, but as he looked at the empty space where the alien fleet had been, he felt confident. Humanity had been building weapons for 200 years. The Empire was about to learn what that meant. 6 weeks after the first battle, Earth sensors detected a massive distortion at the edge of the solar system. Space itself seemed to tear open, and through the wound in reality came ships, thousands of them appearing in perfect formation like a swarm of metal locusts. The Grand Armada had arrived. Supreme Admiral Thexron stood on the bridge of his flagship, a vessel so large that it had its own artificial gravity and could carry 50,000 crew members. He was old, even by his species' standards, with scales that had turned from bright green to a dull gray, but his mind was still sharp, and he had commanded the Armada for 40 years without a single defeat. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Locate all human defensive positions. I want to know exactly what we're facing before we advance." His tactical officer, a younger male with bright orange scales, worked quickly at his console. After several minutes, he looked up with a puzzled expression. "Admiral, we're detecting only standard planetary defenses. Some orbital stations, a few satellites. Nothing that could threaten even a single ship of the line." Thexron's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. They destroyed Fleet Marshal Croven's entire attack force. Where are their weapons?" "I don't know, sir. Our sensors are operating at full capacity. If there were weapons platforms or hidden ships, we would detect them." The Admiral drummed his clawed fingers on the arm of his command chair. He had reviewed the battle reports dozens of times. The humans had used kinetic weapons fired from the moon and other locations, but now his sensors showed nothing. Either the weapons had been moved, or they were still there and somehow invisible to Dominion technology. "Open a communication channel to the planet," Thexron ordered. "Let's see if they're willing to be reasonable now that they face real military power." On Earth, Taiyang received the communication in the same conference room where he had first spoken with Ambassador Velthara. But this time Minji Kang stood beside him, along with several other military commanders. On the screens appeared the face of Supreme Admiral Thexron. "Humans of Earth," the Admiral began, his voice deep and rough. "I am Supreme Admiral Thexron, commander of the Grand Armada. You destroyed a minor punishment fleet and believed you had won a victory. You were wrong. I command 10,000 warships with a combined crew of over 50 million trained warriors. Surrender now and your species will be permitted to join the Dominion. Refuse, and we will reduce your planet to ashes." Taiyang listened patiently, his face showing no emotion. When the Admiral finished, he responded in the same calm voice he always used. "Admiral Thexron, your position is noted. However, our answer remains the same. You are in violation of Earth's territorial space. You have 24 hours to leave the solar system. If you do not comply, we will remove you by force. Thexron's scales rippled with what might have been amusement or anger. You speak of force as if you have any. My sensors show that your planet is defenseless. Where are the weapons you used before? They are exactly where they have always been, Taeyang replied. You simply cannot see them. The Admiral leaned forward in his chair. I have been a warrior for 70 years. I have conquered 40 systems. I do not make empty threats and I do not tolerate deception. If you have weapons, show them. If you do not, surrender while you still can. Taeyang turned to Minji, who nodded once. He looked back at the screen. Very well, Admiral. Since you asked. He pressed a button on his console. Commander G1, please demonstrate our capabilities. In a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Tibet, G1 Han sat surrounded by equipment that would have seemed like magic to most people. She was a small woman with large glasses and perpetually messy hair, but she was also the most brilliant quantum physicist humanity had ever produced. Activating sensor disruption field, she said into her microphone. Full solar system coverage in 3, 2, 1. Now. On the bridge of Thexron's flagship, every sensor screen suddenly went dark. The tactical displays that showed the positions of his 10,000 ships simply vanished. The readings of nearby space disappeared. Even the visual sensors that should have shown the stars themselves showed nothing but static. What is happening? Thexron demanded. Report. His tactical officer was frantically working at his console. Sir, all sensors are non-functional. I'm reading interference on every frequency. It's like someone threw a blanket over the entire system. Switch to backup sensors. Use the manual systems if you have to. I'm trying, sir. Nothing is working. We're completely blind. On Earth, Taeyang watched as the alien admiral's expression changed from confidence to confusion. As I said, Admiral, you cannot see our weapons, but we can see you perfectly well. Every single one of your 10,000 ships is visible to our targeting systems. We know your exact positions, your fleet formations, your weapon placements. You know nothing about us. Thexron felt something he had not experienced in decades, fear. This is a trick. Some kind of sensor jamming. It cannot last forever. It can last as long as necessary, Taeyang replied. You have 24 hours, Admiral. I suggest you use them wisely. The transmission ended. On the Dominion flagship, emergency meetings were called. Officers argued about what to do. Some suggested they should retreat immediately and request additional support. Others insisted that they should attack while they still had superior numbers, blind or not. Thexron made his decision. We attack. All ships advance to Earth orbit. Prepare all weapons. If they want to hide in the dark, we'll simply destroy everything. The Grand Armada began to move. 10,000 ships accelerating toward Earth. But they were moving blind, relying on pre-calculated courses and hope. That was when Suho Bai and his team struck. Suho was a quiet man who rarely smiled, with scars on his hands from years of training. He commanded Earth's Special Operations Forces, soldiers who had trained for exactly this type of mission. His team flew small ships, each one no larger than a bus, equipped with the same stealth technology that kept Earth's weapons hidden from alien sensors. They approached the alien flagship cluster from multiple angles, moving silently through space. The alien ships never saw them coming. All teams, this is Suho. You are authorized to engage. Target the command ships first. Make every shot count. The small human ships opened fire with precisely targeted missiles. They aimed for sensor arrays, communication dishes, engine systems. The aliens, unable to see their attackers, fired blindly into space, their weapons hitting nothing but empty void or their own ships. At the same time, Earth's defense systems activated again. But this time, instead of massive railgun platforms, millions of small drones emerged from hidden bays across the solar system. Each drone was no larger than a car, equipped with simple weapons and basic AI. Individually, they were weak. Together, they were devastating. The drones swarmed the alien fleet like angry insects, attacking from every direction at once. They moved too fast and were too numerous for the blind alien ships to target effectively. The Dominion vessels fired wildly, destroying hundreds of drones, but thousands more took their place. For 6 hours, the battle raged. The alien fleet, unable to coordinate properly without sensors, began to fall into chaos. Ships collided with each other in the darkness. Weapons fire meant for drones struck friendly vessels. Commanders tried to give orders, but their communication systems had been destroyed by Suho's teams. Thexron watched his fleet fall apart from the bridge of his flagship. His ship was barely operational, its weapons offline, its engines damaged. Around him, officers shouted reports of destroyed vessels and failing systems. "Sir, we've lost 3,000 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "Another 1,000 are severely damaged. We must retreat." The old admiral sat in his command chair, feeling the weight of his first defeat pressing down on him. "All ships withdraw beyond Mars orbit. All ships retreat." The surviving vessels of the Grand Armada turned and fled, still blind, colliding with each other in their panic to escape. When they finally reached a safe distance, Jiwan deactivated the sensor disruption field. Slowly, the alien sensors came back online. Thexron looked at his tactical display and felt sick. 7,000 ships remained. 3,000 were gone, destroyed by an enemy he had barely seen. A communication request came from Earth. Reluctantly, he accepted it. Taeyang's face appeared on his screen, still showing the same calm expression. "Admiral Thexron, do you wish to discuss terms of ceasefire?" The old admiral stared at the human for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Yes, we will talk." As Minji watched the alien fleet maintain its distance beyond Mars, she turned to Taeyang. "They'll want to know how we did it. How we hid our technology from their sensors." Taeyang smiled slightly. "Then we'll tell them the truth. We've been preparing for this meeting for 200 years. We studied every piece of alien technology we could find. We learned how their sensors work, what frequencies they use, what signatures they look for, and then we built everything to be invisible to those specific systems. Will they leave? Eventually. But first they need to understand something important." Taeyang looked at the screens showing the damaged alien fleet. "They need to understand that humanity will never submit. Not now, not ever. And if they try again, we'll be ready for that too." The negotiations took place on a neutral space station that humanity had built specifically for this purpose. It orbited Earth at a safe distance, visible to both sides, a symbol of humanity's willingness to talk even after their military victory. Taeyang arrived first, accompanied by Minji and several advisors. Among them was Yuna Shin, a historian who had spent her entire life studying the Dominion from the fragments of information humanity had gathered over 2 centuries. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gray streaks in her hair, carrying a tablet filled with data that would change everything. Supreme Admiral Thexron arrived with his own delegation, including Elder Counselor Zinthar, one of the oldest living members of the Dominion's ruling council. Zinthar was ancient even by his species standards, his body supported by mechanical devices, but his mind was still sharp. They met in a simple conference room with a large window showing Earth below. For a long moment, both sides simply looked at each other across the table. "I have commanded fleets for 70 years, Thexron began, his voice tired. "I have never been defeated until now. I need to understand how you did this. How did a species that has never left its own solar system develop technology that surpasses the Dominion?" Taeyang folded his hands on the table. "Because we had 200 years to prepare. And because we were motivated by something you have never experienced, fear of extinction." Zinthar leaned forward, his mechanical supports whirring softly. "Explain." Yuna stood up, activating her tablet. A holographic display appeared above the table showing a timeline. 217 years ago, a Dominion scout ship entered our solar system. It was badly damaged, probably from a battle somewhere else. It crashed on one of Jupiter's moons. The crew did not survive. The aliens exchanged glances. Thexron spoke carefully. "We have no records of losing a scout ship in this region." "No, you wouldn't," Yuna continued. "Your empire is so large that you lose ships constantly and barely notice. But for us, finding that wreckage changed everything." She changed the holographic display to show images of the crashed ship. "We recovered the ship's computers. Most of the data was corrupted, but we managed to retrieve some information, and what we learned terrified us." The display changed again, showing a map of the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were marked in red. "We learned about the Dominion. We learned that you had conquered 847 species. We studied your incorporation protocols, your tribute systems, your methods of control. And we realized that if you ever found Earth, you would do the same to us. So we made a decision, Taiyang said, taking over the explanation. Humanity united for the first time in its history. Every nation, every culture, every political system agreed on one thing. We would not submit. We would prepare. Yuna's display showed images of construction projects across the solar system. We built weapons in secret disguised as civilian projects. We established colonies on other planets and moons. Not for exploration, but for defense. We developed new technologies specifically designed to counter Dominion systems. Everything we did for 2 centuries had one purpose: to be ready when you finally arrived. Minji spoke next, her voice firm. We studied every battle record we could extract from that crashed ship. We analyzed your tactics, your strategies, your weaknesses. You always rely on superior numbers and advanced technology. You expect species to be terrified of you, but we had time to prepare, and we used every second of it. Elder Counselor Zinthar was silent for a long time, processing this information. Finally he spoke, his voice thin and raspy. You built your entire civilization around the idea of fighting us. Generation after generation working toward a goal they might never see realized. Yes, Taiyang confirmed. My great-grandfather helped build the first hidden weapons platform. My grandmother worked on the sensor stealth technology. I was raised knowing that one day you would come. Every human for 200 years has lived with that knowledge. The old alien's expression was difficult to read, but something in his posture suggested respect, or perhaps sadness. And now that you have defeated us, what do you want? Yuna changed her display again. This time it showed data about the Dominion's economy, trade networks, and resource flows. We want you to understand something. Your empire is dying. That got everyone's attention. Several of the Dominion delegates stood up in protest, but Zinthar raised one withered hand, and they sat back down. Explain this accusation, the elder said calmly. Yuna's display showed complex economic charts. The Dominion's entire system depends on constant expansion. You conquer new worlds, extract their resources as tribute, use those resources to maintain your military, and then use your military to conquer more worlds. It's a cycle that requires continuous growth. This is how empires function, Thexron said defensively. We bring order to chaos. We unite species under one banner. You exploit them, Yuna countered, her voice not angry but sad. Look at these numbers. 80% of species in the Dominion live below the poverty level by your own standards. Their worlds are stripped of resources until they become dependent on Dominion support. You call it unity, but it's actually systematic extraction. She changed the display to show more data. And here's the critical part. Your expansion is slowing down. There are fewer and fewer viable worlds left to conquer. In another 1,000 years, maybe less, you'll run out of new resources to exploit. And when that happens, your entire economic system will collapse. The room was silent. Even the Dominion delegates were staring at the data, unable to deny what it showed. Zinthar spoke quietly. We have known this for some time. The Council debates it privately, but we see no alternative. If we stop expanding, if we reduce tribute demands, the Empire falls apart immediately. Species would rebel. Economies would crash. Billions would die. That's because you've built a system that can't stop, Taiyang said. It's like a vehicle that has no brakes. It can only keep moving forward until it crashes. And what would you have us do? The elder asked. Should we simply dissolve the Dominion? Release 800 worlds into chaos? Taiyang looked at Yuna, who nodded. He turned back to the aliens. We propose an alternative. Instead of conquering new species, start liberating the ones you already control. Reduce tribute demands gradually. Help subjugated worlds develop their own economies and technologies. Transform the Dominion from an empire into a coalition of free worlds. Thexron laughed bitterly. Impossible. The other species would never forgive us for what we've done. They would destroy us the moment we showed weakness. Some might try, Minji admitted. That's why you need allies. Species that will stand with you during the transition. Species that understand the difference between justice and revenge. You mean humanity, Zinthar said. We mean free species, Taiyang corrected. We've already been contacted by 3 species within your empire. They want independence, but they also want peace. They're willing to work with the Dominion if the Dominion is willing to change. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at Earth. We don't want to destroy you. We want you to become something better. The galaxy is large enough for everyone to live with dignity and freedom. But that can't happen while your empire continues as it is. The elder counselor was quiet for a very long time. The other Dominion delegates waited, knowing that his word would decide their next move. Finally, he spoke. The council will never accept this. Too many powerful interests benefit from the current system. They will see your proposal as a threat. Then they'll probably try to destroy Earth, Taeyang said calmly. They'll send every ship they have hoping to make an example of us. And we'll fight them, and many will die on both sides, or... He turned back to face the aliens. Or they can accept reality. The Age of Empires is ending. The Age of Cooperation is beginning. They can fight against that change and be destroyed by it, or they can lead the change and benefit from it. Zinthar stood up slowly, his mechanical supports lifting him. You are either very wise or very foolish. I have not decided which. I will take your words back to the council, but I will tell you honestly, I do not think they will listen. We know, Yuna said softly. But we had to try. As the Dominion delegation prepared to leave, Zinthar approached Taeyang privately. I have lived for 300 years, the old alien said quietly. I have seen the Dominion grow from a small alliance into the largest empire in the galaxy. I helped build this system, and now I see that it is flawed, perhaps fatally so, but I do not know if it can be changed. Everything can be changed, Taeyang replied. The question is whether we have the courage to try. The old alien looked at him with all four of his eyes, an expression that might have been a smile. Your species is remarkable, young but wise beyond your years. I hope you survive what is coming. After the Dominion delegation left, Minji stood beside Taeyang at the window. They're going to send everything they have against us. I know. Will we win? Taeyang was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But we'll fight, and maybe, just maybe, other species will see us fighting and find their own courage. Below them, Earth continued to turn, blue and green and beautiful. Somewhere on that planet, engineers were building new weapons. Scientists were developing new technologies. 5 years had passed since the battle with the Grand Armada. The Dominion's response had been swift and predictable. They declared Earth a forbidden world and established a quarantine zone around human space. Any species caught communicating with humanity would face severe punishment. Trade was banned. Travel was prohibited. Earth was to be isolated until it collapsed under its own limitations. But the Dominion had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated how their own actions would be perceived by the species they controlled. In a hidden facility on Mars, Taeyang stood before a holographic display showing 12 different star systems. Each one represented a species that had successfully gained independence from the Dominion, with Earth's help. He was older now, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes, but his voice was still calm and steady. The Kyler system completed their transition yesterday, reported Donghyun Kim, a young diplomat who had taken over many of Taeyang's day-to-day responsibilities. Their economy is stable, and they've established their own defense force. They're officially free. That's 12, Minji said, walking into the room. She still wore her military uniform, though she now commanded not just Earth's forces but the combined defense network of what they called the Free Worlds Coalition. 12 species that stood up and said no to the Dominion. Taeyang smiled slightly. And each one makes the next easier. The Dominion can't be everywhere at once. Every species they lose weakens them further. On a screen in the corner, Nario appeared. She was the director of Earth's intelligence network, a woman who rarely left her office and seemed to know everything happening in the galaxy before anyone else. Speaking of the Dominion's response, she said, her voice serious, I have news. And it's not good. Everyone's attention turned to her screen. Nari pulled up data that showed ship movements across multiple sectors. The Dominion Senate held an emergency session 3 days ago. They voted to mobilize their entire military force. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon they have. They're planning one massive assault on Earth and the Free Worlds Coalition. How long do we have? Minji asked immediately. 18 months, maybe less. They're pulling ships from garrison duty across the Empire. This is everything they have. If they lose this battle, the Dominion effectively ceases to exist as a military power. Taeyang studied the data carefully. The numbers were staggering. The Dominion was gathering more ships than humanity had ever faced. Even with the Coalition's help, this would be the hardest battle yet. They're desperate, Donghyun observed. They know that if they don't stop us now, more species will leave. This is their last chance to maintain control. Good, Taeyang said quietly. Everyone looked at him in surprise. He explained, if they're desperate, they'll make mistakes. And desperation means they're afraid. They're afraid because they know they're losing. Over the next 18 months, preparations intensified across human space and the Free World's coalition. Minji worked with military commanders from a dozen different species, teaching them Earth's tactics and strategies. It was challenging because each species fought differently, with different strengths and weaknesses. The Kylar, for example, were excellent pilots, but had weak weapons technology. The Verdani were strong and durable, but slow to react. The Helios were brilliant strategists, but physically fragile. Minji had to find ways to combine these different abilities into a cohesive fighting force. Think of it like building a puzzle, she explained to the assembled commanders during a training session. Each piece is different, but together they create something complete. The Kylar will be our interceptors, using their speed to draw enemy fire. The Verdani will hold defensive positions that would break under sustained attack. The Helios will coordinate overall strategy from command ships in the rear. A Kylar commander, a small being with large eyes and quick movements, raised a concern. But we have never fought alongside other species. How do we trust each other in battle? Minji smiled. The same way humanity learned to trust itself. We train together. We learn together. And when the battle comes, we remember that we all fight for the same thing. Freedom. While Minji trained coalition forces, Do-hyun and Ji-won worked on new weapons and defenses. They had studied the previous battles carefully, identifying weaknesses that the Dominion would surely try to exploit. They'll have countermeasures for our sensor disruption, Ji-won predicted, working late in her laboratory. And they'll probably have some kind of protection against kinetic weapons. So we need something new, Do-hyun replied. Something they haven't seen before. What they developed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of one type of weapon, they created systems that could rapidly switch between different attack methods. Kinetic weapons, energy beams, missiles, electromagnetic pulses, even biological agents that could disable ship systems without harming crews. The idea was to keep changing tactics so quickly that the enemy could never fully adapt. Meanwhile, Nari worked on perhaps the most important task of all, intelligence gathering. She needed to know exactly where the Dominion fleet would strike, how they would approach, and what strategies they planned to use. Her sources within the Dominion were limited but valuable. Several species who still lived under Dominion control secretly sympathized with the coalition. They passed information carefully, knowing that discovery meant death. Nari treated each piece of intelligence like the precious gift it was, building a picture of the enemy's plans piece by piece. They're planning a three-pronged attack, she reported to the Coalition Leadership Council. The main fleet will strike directly at Earth. Secondary fleets will attack our most important allied worlds simultaneously. They want to divide our forces and overwhelm us through sheer numbers. Classic strategy, Minji observed. Force us to choose between defending Earth or defending our allies. Which means we do neither, Taeyang said. Everyone looked at him questioningly. He explained, we don't defend, we attack. Hit their fleet before they reach their targets. Force them to fight on our terms, not theirs. As the 18 months drew to a close, one final event occurred that changed everything. A delegation arrived at Earth from an unexpected source. The Dominion itself. They weren't official representatives. They were representatives from 5 different species within the Dominion, who wanted to rebel but lacked the courage to do so alone. They came to Earth secretly, risking execution if they were discovered. Their spokesperson was a young female named Era from a species called the Tauren. She stood before the Coalition Council, her voice shaking with emotion. Our world has been part of the Dominion for 300 years. We have paid tribute for so long that we've forgotten what freedom means. But then we heard about Earth. We heard that one species stood up and said no. And we realized that if you could do it, maybe we could too. We cannot fight the way you do, Ara continued. We don't have weapons or soldiers. But we can do something else. When the Dominion fleet attacks you, we can rebel. All of us simultaneously. We can attack their supply lines, their production facilities, their garrison forces. We can create chaos behind their lines while you fight them at the front. Dong-hyun looked at the young alien with respect. You realize this means your people will suffer? The Dominion will retaliate viciously. We know, Era replied. But we've suffered for 300 years already. At least this way our suffering has meaning. At least this way we fight for something better. The council voted to accept the alliance. 5 more species would join the rebellion when the battle began. Finally, 18 months after Nari's warning, the Dominion fleet arrived. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Millions of ships carrying billions of soldiers, armed with weapons that could destroy planets. They jumped into the solar system expecting to find Earth's defenses concentrated around the planet itself. Instead, they found something very different. The coalition fleet was spread across the entire system in small mobile groups. As soon as the Dominion ships appeared, these groups began attacking from every direction at once. They would strike quickly, destroy what they could, and then retreat before the enemy could respond effectively. At the same time, across dozens of worlds within Dominion space, rebellions erupted. Factories stopped producing. Supply convoys were sabotaged. Communication networks were disrupted. The Dominion suddenly found itself fighting a war on hundreds of fronts simultaneously. The battle for Earth lasted 3 weeks. It was brutal and costly for both sides. Ships were destroyed by the thousands. Entire fleets were eliminated in massive engagements. The space around Earth became a graveyard of shattered vessels and floating debris. But humanity's strategy worked. The Dominion fleet, designed for overwhelming assault, couldn't adapt to the coalition's mobile tactics. They were constantly reacting instead of acting, always one step behind. On the 21st day of battle, the Dominion fleet began to retreat. Not in an organized withdrawal, but in chaos and panic. Their supply lines were cut. Their reinforcements weren't coming. And every day, more species within their empire were rebelling. On Earth, Taiyang addressed the Coalition Council one final time. He stood in the same conference room where he had first rejected the Dominion's demands all those years ago.